Today, my guest is Trent Clark. Now, Trent and I have known each other for a while. I've been a guest on his podcast a couple of times, and we'll get into his book and some other things that I think are worthy of note and probably worthy of everybody else going and finding and reading. But before that, Trent, I'm gonna do like the old dating game thing. I'm not gonna do the music, but I'm gonna go down, yeah, your list of accomplishments so that the audience is aware. And we'll have these in the show notes too. You were a two-sport Division I collegiate athlete. You did 12 seasons in Major League Baseball. You are a three-time World Series championship participant. You've got the rings. I asked you to do something special with the rings. You declined because it was going to be painful. Um, and you were a coach. So you were a coach during that period, and that influences what you do today. So we'll talk about that. You're the CEO of Leadership Entity, consulting high performance in both systems and leadership development. You're an author and a speaker. And your book, Leading Winning Teams, How Teamwork, Motivation, and Strategy Achieve Big League Success. It's a great book, great read, and I'm very happy to have you here, Trent. Welcome.
Thanks. And listen, Marty Strong is featured in Leading Winning Teams, by the way. We got a little Marty Strong segment there in that book.
Yeah, is that like a multiverse thing? I mean, you're right. That's only part of the book I read though.
Yeah, your part? Yeah, that's
Just
good.
my
Make sure we
part.
get the good parts in. That's
Every
good.
seal book, I go right to the index, look for my name, go to that spot. Okay, so that's nothing bad. Uh,
I love it.
so
Well, thanks for having me, Marty. I'm super excited to be here, man.
yeah, it's gonna be great. So I know you were young once, even though you still look really young. What I'd like to do is just kind of go through some of the influences and you know the things, the themes, influences, people, and maybe even events that kind of shaped you as a young person prior to
Yeah.
you going into college and professional ball. And and specifically, was there anything that comes to mind that shaped your value system, shaped the way you operate today, the mindset that you have? And I'd be really interested to hear that.
Yeah, there's a lot there from, it's funny, and like our teenage years, our kid years, they shape us and they shape everything, right? And there's a lot there. For me, I was a kid, I was independent. I'm the youngest of four kids, and I wanted to work. And so I started working when I was 10 years old. I got working with a guy who I subbed out for his paper route. And the local, and I don't even know if there's paper routes anymore, but man, it was a thing back then. And the local guy knew right away, like I was a doer. And, I was already a pretty good athlete and kind of known. And because I was known because of my brothers, I had older brothers. And I got like three routes before I was, 12 years old. So all of a sudden, I'd got a little small business, and, you'll laugh, but I remember by the time I hit eighth grade, I had these three routes, and I had to play, school football now, Marty. This is like no longer rocket football. This is for the school. And I got three of my buddies who don't play football, and I paid them each $1 to do one of the three routes, showed them how to do it, trained them on the weekend, and then pay them $1. I made $5 a day, and I paid each one of them $1. So on Monday through Friday, I went to football practice. My friends delivered it, and I made $2 a day for $10. So I thought I was a pro football player because now I was getting paid to play football. Like I was like, man, I made $10, and then I made my whole $10 on Saturday and Sunday, and I was still had, and now I was a business owner. I was like, I had employees, and man, I thought I was a big deal, right? And that really kind of shaped like the responsibility, the independence, and back then, Marty, paper routes were collections, and there was gifts at Christmas and how you work with everybody. And it wasn't this throw a paper in everybody's yard. My whole route was, I want this in the front door, I want this in the side door, the side mailbox, the black mailbox, not the white mailbox, like all these things, and everyone had their instructions. It was very personalized, and the gifting was very personalized. It was very interactive with my neighborhood, and that felt really good then, to have people know me in the neighborhood. They were rooting for me as an athlete because they knew me as a kid. and it had a lot of influence on my life.
And the weather. I mean, I was a paper boy off and on a couple of times. It's a great metaphor for just what work ethic is or isn't. You know, I to this day I feel bad because I dumped a bunch of the inserts into a sewer because I just didn't want to take the time to put every cent. Now, once you start paying for advertising, that comes back and haunts me. You know, I'm like, oh my God, somebody paid for all those things. You know, but I was 11 years old, and
Yeah.
and if it's cold, if it's raining, if it's super hot, it doesn't matter. You got to get out there and do it, right? You just. I mean that had to be a part of the tenacity that required.
Yeah, as a Michigan kid, yeah, you're talking Four Seasons, man. The winter is a whole different deal. And, we gamified it, right? We made it a bunch of fun and tried to do that. The one thing that you talk about, like discipline and diligence, man, papers are every day. It's not like,
Yeah.
oh, I'd like to take a day off, and if my family was going to go and leave for a 5-day vacation, I had to go organize all those 5 days and who was going to deliver for the day and take care of my people. And so there was a lot of responsibility around it. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work. I mean, I remember dreading it. My dad, I was the youngest, right? So my dad had kind of done a lot better by the time I came along. He wasn't struggling, the paycheck to paycheck anymore, and he built up his little empire, and he was really helpful. Like he helped me gamify it. Like he would go on the weekends, that Sunday insert, right? You got the whole papers. So I had like, these like, let's say 10 blocks. And what I would do is I would run these 10 blocks and he'd use it as a workout. And he would be like, hey, I'd go to the end of the street. He'd pull up in the car. We'd sit down at breakfast and we'd load all the papers at 5:30 and we'd do all the inserts. And then we'd put them all in the car. And then I'd tell him, hey, on this street, I need 16. And he'd hand me 16 out the window. And I'd run, boom, boom, boom. And then he'd be at the end of the street. And I'd go back up the other way. Hey, this 15 on that side. Boom. Next street, 17. Boom. He'd hand me out the window and I'd run. And we'd go do the route. And I'd be done in, 25 minutes, right? I'm fast. So then he's like, let's go to breakfast. And that's when I really started getting the wisdom, right? Because my dad we just have one-on-one conversations. My dad's an accountant, taught accounting at the local college, and ran his own accounting firm. So, I'm having these conversations about business and investing and all these things. And one of those big influential moments came when I was in eighth grade. My dad and I were sitting at breakfast, and I was gloating over what a great entrepreneur I was, that I had three people, who worked for me, right? And my dad had invested in my college fund, and he'd had some issues with my older brothers who inappropriated their funds for other things other than college, right? They
Never heard of
got in
that
control.
before.
Yeah.
Never heard of
Did you
that
imagine
before.
that happening, Mark?
No, no.
Yeah, because a motorcycle is part of college expenses. So, so I said, hey man, like I'm gonna get a college scholarship, Dad. So like, what are we doing with the money? And he was like, well, I have it in an account for you. I'm like, well, you invest your money. So why don't we take my college fund and start investing, because I'm not going to need it, because big head, right? I'm gonna be a college athlete. I'm gonna be a scholarship athlete, Dad. So we did. And it was 1982. It's Reaganomics. It's 18% interest on mortgages. Things are kind of off the deal and the economy's off kilter for sure. And we invest in the two things of our family that were probably pretty social and big at the time, which I was in Battle Creek, Michigan, and Kellogg's owned. That was their headquarters, and we invested in Kellogg's. And then everyone was either you chose, right? You either drank Pepsi or you drank Coke, because you couldn't just drink a soda. Like you had to either be a Pepsi drinker or you were a Coca-Cola drinker. Like we were loyal to the brands, right? And so I bought Pepsi stock because we were Pepsi drinkers. And man, it's so funny, Marty, because I thought I was having major influence, on like it's not like today where you see the internet, you see the stocks all the time. Every week you check it on Saturday and oh, like Pepsi's gone up $1.50 and I own 250 shares. Like, whoa, man, $500 when you're eighth grade. You're like, I am like rich, man. Like, like, and you're like, you think you got like mad money, and then you lose $4 the next week, and you're like, oh crap. So, but my 10K would come in and I would read it. And I'm like, hey, Dad, did you know Pepsi owns Taco Bell and Kentucky Fried Chicken and Pizza Hut? Like, man, I didn't know that. And like all these things. And so we're going out there and I'm learning about this. So I had, of course, jobs and always worked. So by the time I'm 16 years old, we have open lunch at school. And I'm like, hey, Marty, let's go to lunch, man. I'm driving. Where do you want to go? Pizza Hut, Kentucky Fried Chicken, or Taco Bell? Because I thought me and my buddies are having massive impact on Pepsi stock.
Sure.
Not the Michael Jackson commercial and Cola Wars. That's having nothing to do with it. It's me and my buddies that are having massive impact on the stock. But I really learned a lot about the markets, and man, I mean, I did get that scholarship, right? And my dad and I, we invested that money. We took about $10,000 when I was in eighth grade. And fast forward about, 9, 10 years later, I graduate college with a portfolio of $30,000 and no debt. Like, what kids do that anymore?
Except now it was all in Jack Daniel's stock.
Yeah. I moved it all into,
Jack Daniel's and
yeah,
Twinkies.
other stocks. Yeah, right. That's
So it
right.
sounds like you had a really happy childhood. I mean, and that's great. Um, all these things that you were doing, did you feel like they were random? Were you being, you know, directed and mentored by your father or other people, or you just kind of,
No,
I see it, I want to do it, I'm gonna try it, I like it, I'm gonna keep doing it.
yeah, so I was very intentional, Marty, man. I was, 12 going on 30. I was the youngest of four. I wanted to be big like my brothers. Probably what made me such a good athlete was I have two brothers, 4 and 6 years older than me, and I played all sports with them and their friends growing up. So as a 10-year-old, I'm playing with 14 and 16-year-olds, right? And I'm getting
Right.
my tush kicked around here, and they are like no mercy because I am fast, but they're big. And man, Marty, I was like, when I was 12, I was like, man, you know how easy it is to compete against kids my age? This is like so easy. Like I'm used to playing against 16 and 18-year-olds. And I was like, man, I'm killing it. And so I think that really helped my confidence. But the really big moment for me that really kind of set me out was one of my favorite teachers in seventh grade, Mr. Midcalf. He had this like I think he's probably calling it in on English class like the week before spring break, right? It's like Easter week, and we're gonna do career week. And so the questions are, what's life gonna be like when you're 30 years old? And Marty, you'll get a kick out of this. This is 1982. I'm 12 years old, and so I'm gonna turn 30 on 2000. And the song of the day is Prince, Party Like It's 1999, 2000, and you're like,
Well,
that seems like ages away, right? Like space future kind of stuff. But yet, here's the questions. What are you going to be? What do you want to do? What's your life going to look like? And he answers and he asks us these 5 questions. And I take this very seriously because my oldest brother's playing hockey at Michigan State. My next brother's a Division I prospect in football. He's all state, 9.4 yards a carry. He's an amazing tailback. My sister just won Miss Michigan teen. And I'm like, man, I'm better than all you guys. I'm playing in the major league. Like that's what I'm gonna do. And I'm sure the teachers like Mr. Metcalf, right? Like, police officer, Navy SEAL, pro athlete, lawyer, no one says drug dealer, right? Like no one says like, hey, what do like what do I want to be, right? So you stack the boys up in whatever you want to be. But man, I took it seriously and I never looked at that document again. I never looked at that document again. A couple
what
of
a great
influential things happened.
what a
Yeah.
great exercise. And I think I'm gonna go back to that at the end of this interview because I like that and that whole look. I write about this stuff, pushing out to the horizon and kind of imagining, where you're going to be in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and then so the other thing is that shows that even at that age, you actually did have a sense of yourself, but you also had a sense of time, and you had a good work ethic. So okay, I can get to where I'm aiming for because I know I can put in the time and the effort and the work, And I know it's not going to be instant gratification because the whole stock thing is, it's not instant gratification, right? I mean, all these things are kind of the same in that it's going to take time. I'm going to be patient, but I'm going to be driven and I'm going to be committed and I'm going to finish this thing, right? Um,
Yep.
and you kind of did. So let's talk about how you kind of slid it. Oh, there you go. No pun intended. Slid into the
Like how I slid into pro ball, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I'll tell you the next thing that shaped me in that was like about 2.5 years later. We had I set those goals, turned it in, never to think about it again, sort of, right? Because now 2.5 years later, there's going to be a showcase camp. They're everywhere now, but back then they weren't. And it was like a Willy Wonka. You got to get the golden ticket to go, like you got to get the invite. And it was run by a former major leaguer. And this was super important that I get. Now I was playing on one of the best teams, so I got the invite. Came in the mail. 30 days from now, you're coming to this camp. You've been invited. And I'm like, yeah, I'm reading the fine print though. If you're named the most valuable player, you get to sit down with the lead director who played in the major leagues for the Washington Senators and this and that. I'm like, I gotta do that. I gotta find out, right? So we know what happens, Marty, right? When preparation meets opportunity. I got 30 days. I'm playing. I'm in the middle of regionals. I'm training. I'm lifting weights. I'm in the cage hitting. I'm racking it up. And I go into camp and I hit almost 600 for the week and get
wow,
named the MVP. And I'm like, man, and they're like, man, this kid can play, right? And so I sit down. I get to sit down with the guy and he's like, hey, what do you want to do? And I'm like, man, I want to do what you did. I want to play in the majors. And I braced, right? I could just brace because I was gonna hear again, Marty. Yeah, you're probably not big enough. You're probably not strong enough. All the things I've heard, right? And he's
right.
like, yeah, Trent, I've seen you all week, and I gotta tell you, I think you can do it. And I was like, what? Like, you think so? Like, I was so shocked. And then, one of those dumb teenage moments, I gotta go, sir, with all due respect, everybody else is telling me no. And he was like, huh, I got to ask you a question now, Trent. Who are these people? And I was like, my math teacher, my phys ed teacher, my freshman baseball coach, my mom. Now, none of them in ill will, right? None of them in ill will. It's just like, hey, it's a really small percentage. You need to have a backup plan. Stay in school, all those things. But I was hearing, you're not big enough. You're not fast enough. You're not strong enough. And I was starting to tell myself, I'm not enough. And he gave me the best piece of advice, Marty, in this moment. I'm a 15-year-old kid, and he goes, Trent, any of those people play in the major leagues? And I said, no. And he says, I have, and I'm telling you, you got what it takes. He goes, I'm going to strongly caution you that whatever you want to do in this world, you need to go talk to the people who have actually done it and find out if you can do it. And I'm like, yes, sir, I'm going to do that. And I have, Marty, ever since then. Someone tells you can't be a Navy SEAL. Like, hey, have you been a Navy SEAL? Because if Marty Strong tells me I have the ability to be a Navy SEAL, and you go to a young man or young person out there and says, hey, this is what I'm going for, they're going to believe you because you have done it. You know what it takes. And you know if they've got what it takes. And I'm telling you, man, I get a kick out of the Holiday Inn Express commercial, right? You're thinking, oh yeah, what you could do is you could paint it with this, because I did say at a Holiday Inn Express, right? I don't know anything about
I
being a
would
doctor, but
I
they,
would venture to say it's easier to become a Navy SEAL than it is to become a big league ball player. And first off, there are physical requirements. There's certain
yeah,
physical capabilities and skills. I mean, I was the least likely person. I mean, I was a, you know, 17 and a half, almost 18-year-old, 125-pound kid that looked like he was 12. And I got talked into volunteering for it by a 5'6" Vietnam veteran. And he never once acted like it was even close to an impossibility. He was just like, oh yeah, Um, but having gone through it and then been an instructor at the school a couple of times, seeing all the sizes and shapes and all the different and the big athletes, the ones that came from major schools, triathletes, a Hawaiian Ironman like second place, quit week 2, and so I started and I think anybody that's been around the schoolhouse side of the SEAL teams or special operations has a different perspective than maybe somebody who never did. They went right into, operating and never went back to the point of origin. But when you're watching it, it's just so random. You see these big guys that quit. You see these little guys that faint but didn't quit. Then they wake up and they keep going again. You're like, what's driving that guy? And it was always a game with the instructors when we got the first class in 120 something. By the end of the first week, we'd all kind of tally up, all the numbers of people we thought were going to quit before Hell Week, just based on our observations. And the guys that had been there for almost the full 2 year tour had a completely different calculus because they'd seen what I just described. Whereas the guys that were new, like me, we're looking at them maybe like a professional, scout would. We're looking at height, size, speed, agility, athletic prowess, and all that. So I'd venture to say I think it's tougher to do what you did and the way you did it. It's a much smaller eye of the needle to try to go through, and it's much more. The judginess of professional sports. I mean, there's so many prerequisites and so many profiles you're being compared against, and yeah, I mean that and the fact you did that. I in my third book I write a lot about the origins and the studies that have shown that older people don't have creativity anymore because it was beaten out of them by institutional learning and by all the people you mentioned. It's your best friend, your uncle, maybe a parent, maybe an older brother. You say, I want to be a rock star. I want to write a book. I want to be a big league athlete. And that gauntlet is devastating for most people because most people give into it. They don't try to do anything big and audacious early on. And by the time they're in their 20s, they're basically, I can't do that. And they think it's a DNA or genetic thing to do like what you did.
One of the things that's interesting that you and I both went through is, and my journey's a little different, but we both went through this audit of excellence, right? And we got to figure out what excellence looks like. And because a Navy SEAL has gotten excellence written all over them, and we can't measure the heart. That's the thing that we can't measure. No one sees it, right? No one goes, oh, you know what? That guy's diligent. He's just going to stay the course, and no matter what you do, you can't knock this guy down because he's coming back at you. You can't measure the heart. And so it's like here I did this 3 state championships in high school in a row in baseball. Then I went to junior college and played 2 national championships. Then I went on to pro ball after 2 years at another school, and then went to 2 World Series in the next 4 years. So I had this 11-year span where I played in 7 championships and won one.
Oh,
and
wow.
lost and lost. And I'm like, and you know what happens when you lose, man. You review everything, right?
Yeah.
You go through the tapes. And this is what you gotta review the film. Why did we win? Why did we lose? And this is where things like you and I, Marty, as instructors and coaches, we go back and we go, oh, Tim Daniels, I'll take 10 more just like him. And they're like, what do you mean, Marty? He's not the biggest. He's not the strongest. He's not the fastest. And you're like, yeah, but I know what's heart is in that guy. And I know he shows up. I know he's got all those itties. He's got coachability. He's got adaptability. He handles his responsibility. He's got integrity. Like all these things that I need. That's what I need more of. I need 10 more of those just like him and don't care what the outside package looks like. And that's what happened in the audit of excellence. Was now I found out why people win. And a short stop with Nick Saban in a year at Michigan State really helped that because that catapulted me on what excellence really was. Because he knew exactly what it looked like and what it didn't look like. And he had no tolerance for anything less than excellence.
Yeah. I mean, and this special operations community the same way. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're flying a special operations aircraft or if you're somebody on the ground. The excellence is defined by the people that went before you, and it's stretched forward based on all the anticipated challenges that nobody's actually experienced yet, right? So none of us have fought, conducted a special ops mission on Mars yet, or in the Arctic, but you're thinking about it all the time, and you know that there's going to be a point where you train to what everybody is determined to be, on a scale of 1 to 10, a 10, right? Solid across every category of performance. And then you say, all right, I've got that. I got to sustain that through everything I've got to do to sustain that. But then what's beyond that? What's beyond everybody's experience? That is a whole different kind of. It's almost like a uh, a glowing area of unknown. And you say, how do I train to it? Well, 99% of it for people that are in professional sports or any kind of an organization where they experience this kind of stay on the edge, but what's over on the other side of the edge is psychological. It's mental training. It's the mindset. It's I have to be ready to be baffled and humbled with something I didn't anticipate and nobody that trained me and prepared me anticipated.
Yeah, and I love that. And I think here's the other issue. Everybody wants adaptability, right? Like, oh, I really, no matter, I really need to be able to adapt to this, right? So, so the highest, right? And I love Saban's, term, right? Like high achievers don't like mediocrity, and mediocrity doesn't like high achievers because they don't mix, they don't go well. Because the high achievers are anticipating what's going to happen, and then they do something about it. They're like, oh, if this happens, I need to be ready for that. So let me get a couple of reps in there. I stay after practice and I do an extra 15 minutes on what I anticipate could potentially happen. No, it's not likely. It's not likely, but there's a 15 or 20% chance, and that's enough to know that if this happens, I should be ready for that, right? And so now all of a sudden, these companies, these organizations, they want adaptability, but they don't ever refine the tools and give the systems in place. Like, what's your fallback system? Like, let's train on that. It's like a fire drill that no one ever does the fire drill, and then he goes, "It's a fire. Why did we screw up the drill so bad?" Because you never practiced it. Yeah, we've never had a fire, but now when it did happen, you never actually practiced the drill, and you're wondering why everybody's screwing it up. Come on, man. Like, we've got to have some reps in there to get that confidence. And this is where, the high front forward military, like SEALs, recons, all the front, lines, big deal. Pro athletes and entrepreneurs have the same three qualities. They have this hyper learning environment, right? You have to learn faster, you don't survive, right? You go into an entrepreneurship, man, it's like learn quick because your competition's there, everybody's going. You've got to be able to adapt to that, and entrepreneurs have figured that out. The high level military has figured that training out and done it well. The pro athletes know if you don't learn fast, you don't stay. And so here's the challenge of it. How can you do that well? And that's not always an easy thing to train. And this is where we get that gap in excellence. You got that physical thing that all's got the package and looks like, but they don't have that psychological mentality, that ability to learn quickly, that adaptation. They don't have that ability to anticipate what's about to happen. What's about to happen? What's about to happen? Thinking through it. If this is hit to me, what do I do? If they call my number, what do I got to do? If I got to lead on this mission, what is everyone going to expect from me? I'm already thinking about it before I ever got the call. So I've already made a mental note of that, and I've done the training of what's going to be expected of me. And that's a separator for me.
Which is why people like you are in demand to help organizations because they don't teach this in college. They don't in general teach it when you're a child. Nobody's really trying to get you to stretch your mental limits and your capabilities. Nobody's tossing three or four balls at you at once and seeing what your decision making process is like, and then helping you hone whether it's triaging three, four, six, and five or whatever it is. They're not teaching you how to train yourself. Even if you've got other mentors and influencers and you're in a training program, you have to start becoming your own training engine, right? And when you get to a top level of athleticism, like in the Olympics, you understand what you can do, you understand your body mechanics, you understand the sport you're in, and sure, somebody else can come in and videotape you and give you optimization tips and all that, but eventually you're kind of your own best coach because you want to be and because you understand that that's the level of commitment you need, and it's really hard, and I know you've seen this. One of the biggest questions I get from everybody about what was the big difference when you left the SEALs and came out in a commercial business. and I kind of take a deep breath because I'm not sure how people are going to take this. And I said, well, when you're on a team, and I also somebody made this definition of a team, that team's overused, right? It says a team is like a combat team or like a professional sports team. Teams go out on the field, they compete together, they win or lose together. The consequences are shared by everybody, right? A committee gets together, pretends they're a team, walks out, and nobody's actually accountable for anything that happened in there. So that's not a team. So you have to be accountable to everybody else, and you have to be accountable to yourself. And you don't find that outside of those true team environments. So you come out of 5 years, 10 years of professional sports, whether it's individual athletics or team athletics, and you come out of the military, and you're hardwired thinking that's the way the rest of the universe is. Especially if you've been around coaches and other mentors, because all right, everybody's thinking this way. Everybody's thinking about optimizing and becoming as efficient and as extremely proficient and exceptional as you possibly can be at all times. That's everybody's goal. And then you join the first company, whatever, and at 4:55, it sounds like a NASCAR starting line because the parking lot, everybody's revving up and they're gone. And there's the mic drop of projects and due dates and things laying around that organization metaphorically that nobody gave a crap about because it's 5 o'clock. I'm done. Or I want you to take this accountant that we just hired. I want you to show them the ropes, help them out, train them, whatever. Yeah, okay. If you're in a team, you want every player to be an exceptional player, right? I don't even care if you're second string. You want the second string NFL quarterback to be able to step in mid-game and kick ass like he was the first string quarterback, right? You don't tolerate anything less than that. It's the same thing in the military. You train everybody to step up and be the leader. Everybody step up in the place of somebody that gets hit. All right, so you don't know how to do communications, or you're not the communications guy, but you know how to. He gets hit, go grab it, start doing the job, right? Then you get out and you don't see it. And even as a leader, when I had sub leaders, there were civilians trying to get them to care at that level, and that's a lot of baggage of not being a part of the end state. They didn't have an equity share in the outcome. Obviously, in sports and in the military, everybody has an equity share because you either come back together or you come back missing some people, or some people are missing some body parts, or you come back with a trophy or you don't, come back with a trophy frequently enough, you don't have a job anymore, right? Because they reshuffle the team. So I couldn't figure out a way, and to this day, it's really difficult to figure out a way to create those incentives that are personal incentives, not just organizational environments and cultures, to have the mindset that you described, to care, to push, to drive, to hone your skills.
Yeah, I like Patrick Lencioni, right, where he talked about, the five elements of a cohesive team. I think cohesive is the big one. Teams are easy. Like you can put teams together and they will suck. You can put, like you could do all sorts of things. And here's the other thing, Marty. I thought when I went back to this, to the commercial business life, that people would want to have good teams, that most people have experienced being on a good team. And that's not true either. And you and I got the blessing of being part of a couple of the best teams in the world, right? And guess what? Being a part of the best team in the world isn't easy. But man, is it rewarding, man? Like, the honor that you feel wearing that uniform, whether that's the badge, the rings, the staying out on that arena, and like listen, like what you do for our country, defending our nation's freedom, like that can never be replaced internally in a level of pride of being a member on that team. But being a part of great teams is never easy. And the thing about it is, did you ever complain about how hard SEAL training was to become a SEAL? Like, after you've reached the prize, no one ever said, man, I can't believe we had to do all that hill running to win a world championship. Said nobody ever. We talk about it. I think I'm coming up on a 25-year anniversary of the '02 World Championship. And everybody will get together and talk about everything that's fabulous. not how hard it was. And it was freaking hard. Like at the time, it sucked at sometimes. But you know what? No one ever talks about. They talk about the accomplishment, what we did together. The brotherhood is immediate. The fraternity is amazing. And I think two things that you talk about. One's a former, naval officer, Roger Staubach, who built one of the best teams in the Dallas Cowboys and led it. And I loved his comment. Used to have it on all my weight rooms. There are no traffic jams along the extra mile. That's it, man. Like, you want to stay and do extra. Guess what? You leave work at 7 o'clock. Guess what? You don't have a 90-minute commute anymore. You can get home. You're 31 miles away. You can get home in 31 minutes. At 5 o'clock, that's going to be 90 minutes because you're not willing to stay. There's no traffic jams along the extra mile.
Yeah.
And when the people understood that, and when you talk about good teams, Belichick, football coach, right, should be in the Hall of Fame for sure, as one of the best NFL coaches of all time. Said, listen, I know I have a good team when everybody on the team knows their role and they're doing it. And you and I have been in this entrepreneurial environment a long time, right? And you walk in, how many times have you gone in organizations and people don't know their role? They don't know what they're required to. I'm like, hey, do you remember when you interviewed and they had this stack of the qualifications they needed? This is kind of the expectations of what you were going to do here and what you might be responsible for. But then no one moved that along and said, this is how many things we need from you a month. This is how many people we need you to manage. This is what our expectations of your outcomes. No one ever went through that with them. So they don't know their role. And then there's a bunch of people who know their role, and then no one holds them accountable to it, so they just don't do it. They run around and they run around the phone busy, and they look like they're doing stuff, and actually no production because no one's actually measuring whether they're actually accomplishing their role inside the organization. If organizations will simply invest like you guys invested into getting the best SEALs, like you got to come to training and you've got to get through the training. We're going to invest, and you've got to meet the pre-qualifications, and you have to be I think you have to be set. You have to be offered. What is it called?
Good looking.
Nominated. Yes, good looking. And nominated. Like there's a nomination process. There's something to that says that, hey, yes, I think this person's qualified. And then in baseball, we spent millions of dollars scouring the world for players. And then I talk to companies and they're like, oh, well, I put up an ad on Indeed and anyone with a pulse got a job, but we got a great team. And I'm like, listen, man, like just happened, like the best 10% of people and all in their role showed up and answered your ad? I doubt it. Like
Yeah.
you had no interview process other than 3 questions and you gave them a job for $100,000 a year. And you're like, I can't believe they're not performing. And I'm like,
I,
really? You can't
I used
believe
to get
this?
I used to
Because,
get in debates with HR directors. So, the kind of normal approach is you put out the job posting, they shape the job posting. It's almost all technical specifications. So it's, you know, there's not a whole lot of human nature built into it. There's nobody saying, do you like working in groups? Do you like working? None of those kinds of
yeah,
psychological questions. It's pretty much you're static. Can you type? Can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? And then they bring everybody in after they've looked at the best of the best of the resumes that matched up with that kind of um, sterile blueprint. And then they hire somebody based on how well they did in the interview, answering questions about the same list of things that were on the resume. And then the person fails, or they fail in that organization because the organization is a 100-mile-an-hour organization and they're 50-mile-an-hour people. And or they're very solely focused on personal project work, and they either hate or have never had to work in a project team, collaborating with other people and communicating with other people. That freaks them out. And eventually, when I saw the attrition that was happening all the time, and who does the exit interview? HR. So what are they going to do? Document? Well, we really did a bad job. We did a bad job sourcing it. We did a bad job defining it. We did a bad job vetting it. We did a bad job interviewing, and we did a bad job training. Well, it didn't matter what the training was because you picked the wrong kind of person for what the organization needed. If you need a team kind of player, you need somebody that's comfortable in a little bit of chaos and a little bit of getting roughed up, the schedule, meaning you thought you were going to do this on Tuesday. Guess what? Not. You're not going to do that on Tuesday. And be okay with it, right? Roll with it psychologically. They're out there. And a lot of them come from small businesses, and because all small businesses are kind of like that, in general. And when they move up to a mid-sized business, they're already ready to be that kind of person. But mid-sized business and large business are looking for more. They're looking for nuts and bolts and things that fit into their little cogs. And then they wonder why they don't have a culture. They wonder why people are getting in their cars at 4:55. But I remember somebody asked me one time, from the SEAL teams, do I remember something that kind of easily defines what a team looks like? And so I coached Little League football, and I also, obviously trained and coached and led SEALs. And with a certain level of kids from like 8 to 13 in football, or probably young SEALs, I can watch them for about 10 minutes, and I see exactly what is right and wrong with that group. I mean, because I've been there so many times, I can see whether there's like one alpha trying to drive everything, and so there's no team. Maybe there's another leader that should be leading, but they're not leading because there's this alpha that they're getting too much external help, too much external input, so they can't actually do anything for themselves, whatever it is, right? And so I'm thinking about what's the example, and I said, here's one. We're in Sigonella, Italy, and in walks this lieutenant colonel Air Force guy, and he says, introduces himself to me, and he goes, where are you guys? I said, well, they're out there. The aircraft, needs to be unloaded and all that stuff. So we walk out, and my guys got all these pallets of equipment, and they're moving them, and they're staging them, and they're stacking them, and they're inventorying them, and they're moving them in the into different trucks to get ready to go. And he said, my senior enlisted guy is supposed to be here. My master, like E9 guy, supposed to be here. I'd like to introduce him to yours. Where's yours? And I'd like to meet. I understood there was 2 officers. I said, yeah. Where are yours? Oh, they're out there. Out where? Out there doing that, unloading and packing and all that stuff. He said, well, why are they out there? I said, because it's got to get done. I'd be out there, except I had to come in and meet you and bring you out here. And he goes, so which one's the senior enlisted guy? And which one's your officer? And we had no distinction. We were all wearing the same thing. And you couldn't tell because one guy wasn't standing off of the clipboard or with his hands on his hips, watching it. Everybody was getting the job done because as a team, we weren't going to have beer until everything was accounted for, everything was offloaded, everything was onloaded. Eventually, everything was offloaded, right? All that had to be done before anybody was going to have a beer or call home or anything. And you didn't have to say a word. And that was kind of the closest, simplest explanation of what it's like to stand back and watch the team. Everybody knows the mission, what the team's trying to accomplish, what each element within the team is trying to accomplish, and what they're responsible for accomplishing.
Yeah, and I love that. I think the hierarchy thing is titles, and it gets troubling sometimes, especially in the corporate environment, right? Because there's something that's coming with that, like, oh, well, they're the senior vice president of sales, and like, so they're not selling. Like, are you sure? Like, and so like, there's a bunch of challenges I don't love with it, and this is why I think the roles and responsibilities are so important, and everything gets in alignment because this is the challenge in organizations is there's not a lot of alignment because I think most people, if you have the right people, they can adapt to different roles. They just need to know what their role is and what success looks like in that role and like work with them to show them how to be the best they can be in that role. What I think a lot of people don't understand in organizations is that if you want to progress, the only thing you're measured on is the role you're in right now. This is your role. How are you managing those responsibilities? Like, you know what? I could be a great regional vice president of Starbucks, but you're not a district manager yet. You're just a manager of a store, of which you're 15th of 16 in the district per stores of how you're operating. But I would be a great regional. Like, wait a minute, man. You're currently being measured on where you're at, and your store is 15th of 16th. And when we're going to hire a district manager, which would be the next logical role here, is They're only going to look at the top probably two in this district and maybe two from the closest district next
Right.
door who they might want to pull over and go, man, I love the way you're running things. And if you could run our district the way you run your store, watch out. I like the way you manage your role and manage your responsibilities. And I don't think people understand that, Marty. I don't think they always get the fact of like, how do I contribute? Because if you are a contributor, contributors never have a problem finding a job. They never have a problem getting a role.
Right. So, in the time we have left, I know you encapsulated a lot of things we talked about in your book. And if you could talk a little bit about the book and also what you're doing right now today. And then I'll save my final question, which is your career exam again.
Yeah. So yeah, I think the leading winning teams is really a little bit of a dive into your personal leadership, right? I think to your point about how we hire and things like that, like people should understand where they at. They face ethical dilemmas. How do I lead? Even if it's how do I lead my church choir? How do I lead the youth group on a mission? Where have you had a chance to lead? Where have you had a chance to compete? Walk me through competition, how you got ready for competition. Like, what are we asking from our team members? And so I did this TEDx talk, right, called The Pain Exchange, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. And you get to choose because no one that I know, Marty, that's our age, has been without pain, right? No one seems to be spared that, right? We get that pain one way or another. And the pain of discipline I have found to be acute, short term. The pain of regret is chronic, it's long term, it stays with us for a long time. We hill run for 2 days and bust our butt. Yeah, we're sore for a little bit, but we're better. And on Friday, we're fine. we're not sore anymore. And we got better. So like the pain of that training discipline is acute, it's short term. The chronic pain of losing your integrity, of making choices that are just against what you truly believe and not understanding, giving your best in a moment in an effort. That regret is filled. Like we have bar stools that are filled every day at 3:30, 4 o'clock at quitting time, trying to drown the pain of regret because the only thing that lives within us and the only thing to do is drown it for short term until the next morning when I wake up again with me and I got to start this routine all over again. And that pain is so deep that is the only way I'm going to get through it. And man, that's no way to live, man. And so I did that TEDx talk. So as I wrote the book, I had these great, uh, guests on my show of Winners Find a Way, like Marty Strong. And then I featured some of those key elements in these points that I was making about their leadership journey. And then at the end of each chapter, it's the pain exchange. Are you willing to do something to actually lean into how you'll be as a better leader, how you'll be as a better person, how you'll be a better father or mother, how you'll be a better teammate? And this is the exercises that I take people through to help them go through it. It's a bunch of fun and I enjoy it, man. I mean, the whole journey was really, Marty, it was really shaped by my 12-year-old deal, right? Like this is what it was. Like I'm 12-year-old Mr. Metcalf as an assignment. And I got to tell you, in December of 1999, I went home to visit my parents for Christmas time. I was gonna be 30, December 31st, 1999, and then Y2K was gonna happen the next day, and everything would fold. And I arrive, and my mother says, "Hey, a letter came for you from the school." And of course, I think that's my college asking for money because I've been a success. So why don't you send the college some money, right? And they're like, no, no, no. She's like the grade school. Mr. Midcalf sent me an assignment. He said one thing at the top of the paper. He says, "How'd you do?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I totally remember this assignment." I take out my piece of paper. What are you going to do next after high school? I'm going to play baseball at Arizona State University, the best college baseball team in the country at that time. They never called. I played baseball and tennis at the University of Toledo. What are you going to be doing for your job at 30 years old? I'll be playing Major League Baseball. I was let go at 23, not able to play anymore. They gave me that you'd make a good coach talk at a very young age, and I was job transitioning fast. And so at 30, I was coaching for the Los Angeles Angels. So I just had come from Phoenix. where will you be living? I'll be living in Arizona in a golf and tennis community because I was 12-year-old and I was tired of the cold and delivering papers in the cold. I said, I'm going to live where it's beautiful. And I had just flown in the night before from my golf and tennis community in Arizona. Will you be married? Yeah, I'll marry a blonde girl that's taller than me. That wasn't hard to find, Marty. I'm 5'6". She's 5'8". She's a Dutch girl. And I married and was married to her 30 years, right? And that's who I married. And then what will your family look? And I said, I'll have a son. And I was bringing my son Noah, who's now almost 28. He was a year and a half old, coming home to see his grandparents for his real first Christmas that he would remember since he was only 6 months, the first one. And that's what I said when I was 12 years old. I never looked at it again. You don't think that shaped who my friends were in high school? If you're going to go get in trouble, I can't go get in trouble. I need a college to sign me. They don't need a problem athlete. I'm not 6'2", 250 pounds. I'm not going to get a pass. I got one shot at this. So I made decisions. So when you look at my life, it was very intentional, Marty. I knew exactly where I wanted to
You
go, and I
did
kind
a
of made
lot,
decisions
did a
based on
lot better than me, man. I wanted to be either an archaeologist, a lead singer or guitar player in a rock band. Like I'm talking like hair band
Nice.
or a
Yeah.
writer. And I only got one out of three, and it took a long time before I started writing. Um, in 60 seconds, what's the one? I'll give you 10 years instead of 30 years because it kind of limits things. If it's 30 years, you'd be a 90-year-old or something. So, oh,
Yeah.
even younger than that. Never mind.
I mean,
You look a lot younger than you are anyway. In 60 seconds, what's the one new thing on the horizon that you really love to be able to achieve?
yeah, so I'm building this coaching environment and consulting environment around putting a lot of coaches and passing on the information that you and I got, Marty, about how to really operate in a good organization. And I got paired up with Bloom Growth on that, which is great software. A playbook was written called Flourish, and I give that to a lot of people and make them think about, wow, how am I really doing this inside my organization? Because I'm tired of talking about what you're dreaming about. Because I'm a dream maker. You need to take your dreams and make it a reality, and you're dreaming about it, and I love that. That means we're vision work. We're doing that. Now the book will take that and through the coaching we'll implement that and make it a reality. And we've done it time and time again. 10 million to 100 million. I mean, over 4,000, companies on the software and just over 45,000 leaders. It's changing the shape of how we're going to organize, how we're going to work, how we're going to have fun at work and enjoy actually what we do, compete and do it better than other people. I like winning, Marty.
And, and it's a great book. You sent me a copy. Thank you. Well, that's all the time we have now, but I know I've been on your podcast a couple of times. Would you come back?
Of course. Yeah, of course.
All right.
Always.
Well, always good seeing. I mean, great talking to you. You're a high energy guy, and whenever whenever I need to have a little jolt of electricity, I know I can just reach out to you and sit back and just
Please.
soak in. All right, man.
So, yeah.
Thanks for being on Instincts.